Basketball legend Sheryl Swoopes has been officially removed from all WNBA broadcasts for the 2025 season, following her year-long campaign of misinformation about Caitlin Clark. The Dallas Wings quietly erased her name from their broadcasting lineup after multiple confrontations with basketball royalty like Nancy Lieberman and Stephen A. Smith. Well, how the mighty have fallen. Sheryl Swoopes, four-time WNBA champion and Basketball Hall of Famer, has just learned the hard way that even legends can be replaced when they become liabilities. After spending an entire year spreading misinformation about Caitlin Clark, Swoopes has been unceremoniously removed from all WNBA broadcasts for the 2025 season. This isn't just about being taken off Indiana Fever games. The Dallas Wings have completely erased her from their broadcasting lineup, the basketball equivalent of being sent to Siberia. A quick glance at the Wings' announcement of their 2025 broadcasting team shows Swoopes' name glaringly absent, replaced by none other than Nancy Lieberman, one of the very people who called her out. The irony here is absolutely delicious. Did Swoopes really think she could spend a year undermining the WNBA's biggest star without consequences? In what universe was that going to work out well for her broadcasting career? Let's rewind and examine how she managed to talk herself out of a job. During her now infamous February appearance on Gil's Arena, Swoopes couldn't even get basic facts straight about Clark. She claimed Clark was in her 5th college season, wrong it was her 4th, and that she took about 40 shots a game, wildly inaccurate, as Clark averaged 22.7. This isn't just for Caitlin, but you asked me back, Caitlin, if you're going to break a record to me, if it's legitimate, you have to break that record in the same amount of time that player said it. Oh, Caitlin Clark right now probably takes about 40 shots a game. Swoopes declared with unearned confidence. These weren't innocent mistakes, but seemed calculated to diminish Clark's achievements. Gil's Arena. So if Kelsey Plum set that record in 4 years, well, Caitlin should have broke that record in 4 years. But because there's a COVID year and then there's another year, you know what I mean? So she's already had an extra year to break that record. So is it truly a broken record? Even more telling was Swoopes' dismissive tone when discussing Clark's record-breaking performances. So is it truly a broken record? I don't know. I don't think so, she said, suggesting Clark's accomplishments were somehow illegitimate because of the COVID year, despite the fact that Clark completed her college career in exactly 4 years. When pressed about Clark's WNBA potential, Swoopes doubled down. Will Caitlin Clark come into the WNBA and do what she's doing right now immediately? Absolutely not. Not going to happen. The contempt was impossible to miss. The problem for Swoopes wasn't just that she was wrong, spectacularly embarrassingly wrong, as Clark went on to break the WNBA rookie assist record and three-point record, but that her comments revealed something darker than mere skepticism. There was a palpable bitterness behind her words, an inability to celebrate another player's success without feeling threatened. During Wings broadcasts, Swoopes' bias became even more obvious. Viewers noticed how she would awkwardly avoid mentioning Clark's name when discussing Fever games, instead referring to the Indiana Fever or Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston and those girls. It was so deliberate and uncomfortable that fans started calling her out on social media. As one analyst pointed out, how are you up there talking about, oh, the Indiana Fever are doing this, oh, Kelsey Mitchell and the Indiana Fever, oh, Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell and those girls. You had such the hardest time mentioning Caitlin Clark's name. Eventually, this obvious bias caught the attention of bigger voices in basketball, including Stephen A. Smith, who publicly eviscerated Swoopes on his platform. You know basketball better than me. You know basketball better than any of the pundits. You know basketball better than most of the men that play basketball. Smith began, before delivering the knockout punch. There is no way in hell you just accidentally left Caitlin Clark's name out of that soliloquy that you dropped about the Indiana Fever. Stop it. You know that. Stop it. Smith's rebuke was particularly damaging because he questioned not just Swoopes' conclusions but her integrity. He essentially accused her of deliberately ignoring Clark's impact, despite knowing better, a serious charge against a broadcaster whose job requires objectivity. But picking a fight with Stephen A. was just the beginning of Swoopes' professional implosion. According to reports, Nancy Lieberman, a broadcasting colleague and former friend of Swoopes, personally called Swoopes to confront her about the inaccuracies in her statements about Clark. That conversation evidently went poorly, so poorly that Lieberman would later confirm their relationship was pretty much done as a result. The fallout was swift and humiliating. In a twist that couldn't have been scripted better for maximum embarrassment, Lieberman ended up replacing Swoopes on the Dallas Wings broadcasts. This wasn't just a personnel change. It was a public statement about who had credibility in basketball circles. These high-profile confrontations did more than just damage Swoopes' reputation with fans. They isolated her within the professional basketball community. When figures like Smith and Lieberman publicly question your integrity, networks and organizations take notice. For the Dallas Wings and their broadcast partner, these feuds likely confirmed what viewer complaints had already suggested. Swoopes had become a liability rather than an asset to their brand. What makes the situation particularly interesting is that Swoopes' anti-Clark campaign isn't an isolated incident, but part of a troubling pattern of behavior that stretches back years. While her Hall of Fame playing career brought her well-deserved accolades as one of the WNBA's founding stars, her post-playing career reveals a consistent pattern of problematic behavior. The warning signs were blinding at Loyola University in Chicago. In July 2016, Swoopes was fired as head coach following a mass exodus of players that should have raised red flags for anyone considering hiring her again. What coach loses 10 out of 12 returning players in a single season? That's not normal turnover. That's a 5-alarm fire in your program. Former Loyola player Kate Sohan didn't mince words about Swoopes' coaching abilities. Just because you're a great player doesn't mean you're a great coach. She seems to thrive off drama. Wherever she goes, the drama is. Other players described an emotionally volatile environment where Swoopes would cry during games and practices, threaten scholarships, and inappropriately share personal information. Great players don't automatically make great mentors, and Swoopes exemplifies this disconnect perfectly. The Lauren Hibbert situation particularly stands out. According to Hibbert, Swoopes pressured her to sign a medical hardship form, effectively ending her athletic career, with false promises that she'd remain with the team as a manager. When Hibbert later discovered she wouldn't even travel with the team, the betrayal was complete. This manipulation triggered formal complaints and ultimately contributed to Swoopes' dismissal. Fast forward to 2024, and we see the same dismissive, unsupportive behavior directed at Caitlin Clark. The pattern is clear. When others succeed or challenge her authority, Swoopes responds with hostility rather than support. Whether it's college players transferring en masse or a rising star breaking records, Swoopes seems incapable of celebrating others' success without feeling threatened. This toxic pattern ultimately caught up with her at the Dallas Wings, where her commentary became too controversial even for a league that typically stands by its legends. The consistent threads connecting her Loyola firing to her broadcasting removal paint a picture of someone who's never learned to adapt or grow from criticism. What happened next might be the most telling part of this saga. Suddenly, after a year of criticism and controversy, Swoopes appeared on ESPN praising the very player she'd spent months criticizing. How much stronger Caitlin got in the off-season. You know, she was in the gym working on her game. Swoopes gushed, adding, "This Indiana Fever team, they have put the pieces together in this off-season, and I'm excited to see what they're going to do." She even went further. "The team that I feel made the biggest moves, maybe even the best moves, that would be the Indiana Fever. I think the Indiana Fever went from just being in the playoffs last season to potentially winning a championship." Fans weren't buying this dramatic reversal for a second. Social media exploded with skepticism and mockery. Comments on ESPNW's post ranged from, "Oh, how she is changing her tune now," to "Is Swoopes okay? She said something nice about CC instead of bashing with a lie." Others were more direct. "She admits defeat, and I can't imagine how many months of therapy it took her to say Caitlin's name without a scowl." Even Stephen A. Smith couldn't resist taking a shot at Swoopes' sudden conversion, pointing out that her previous silence on Clark's talents seemed deeply personal. What she's not realizing is that when she doesn't state the obvious, it's automatically going to be assumed that it's something personal, because we know you know the game of basketball too. Well, to ignore the kind of things that she's ignoring when it comes to Caitlin Clark. The timing of Swoopes' dramatic change of heart couldn't be more transparent. With her broadcasting career in jeopardy and the entire basketball world recognizing Clark's impact, Swoopes is desperately trying to get on the right side of history before she's completely left behind, but it appears to be too little. Too late. The Dallas Wings have made their decision, and Swoopes' name is nowhere to be found on their 2025 broadcasting lineup. This wasn't just about protecting Caitlin Clark, it was about protecting the Wings brand and viewer experience. The decision to remove Swoopes from all games, not just Fever matchups, suggests the organization recognized a fundamental problem with her broadcasting approach that extended beyond a single-player rivalry. Her persistent negativity and factual errors had transformed from a minor irritation into a genuine business liability as viewership for women's basketball continued to soar. In an era where the WNBA is experiencing unprecedented growth, broadcasters who can't celebrate that growth, or worse, actively undermine it with misinformation, simply can't be part of the equation anymore. What makes this situation particularly ironic is that the same Indiana Fever that Swoopes spent a year criticizing has transformed into a legitimate title contender right before our eyes. What started with that late-season 5-game winning streak when Clark began finding her rhythm was just the appetizer. The main course is being served in 2025, and basketball fans everywhere are taking notice. Indiana's front office has orchestrated perhaps the most impressive roster transformation in recent WNBA history. The additions of 3-time champion Natasha Howard and 2-time champion Tina Charles aren't just good moves. They're the kind of strategic chess pieces that elevate a team from playoff participant to championship threat. Howard brings defensive excellence as a former Defensive Player of the Year winner, perfectly complementing the Fever's young core. And let's not forget Sophie Cunningham, Sydney Colson and Brianna Turner rounding out a solid bench. What makes these veteran acquisitions so brilliant is how they fit around Clark, Boston, Hall and Mitchell. The Fever's foundation of young talent needed exactly what Howard and Bonner provide: championship experience, defensive versatility, and the leadership that only comes from having been in pressure cooker playoff situations. This roster now has the perfect balance of youth effurience, similar to how championship teams like the 2022 Aces blended veteran savvy with emerging stars. The championship window for Indiana isn't just cracking open, it's being thrown wide open. With Clark surrounded by Boston's interior dominance, Mitchell's scoring punch, Hull's hustle, and now the championship DNA of the new free agent acquisitions, the Fever have constructed a roster that can challenge any team in the league. Clark's trajectory heading into year 2 should terrify the rest of the league. You know, those last 13 games of 2024 when the Fever went 8-5, that wasn't a fluke. It was Clark finally adjusting to the pro game. With a full off-season to build strength and refine her game, we're likely seeing just the beginning of what she can accomplish at the professional level. Even Swoopes herself couldn't deny the Fever's potential any longer, recently stating, "The team I feel made the biggest moves, Matt, would be the Indiana Fever." She added, "I think the Indiana Fever went from being in the playoffs last season to potentially winning a championship. I'm excited to see what they're going to do." When your harshest critic is suddenly singing your praises, you know something special is brewing. But for Swoopes, this desperate attempt at damage control comes far too late to save her broadcasting career. The contrast couldn't be more striking. While Swoopes is desperately trying to salvage her broadcasting career with transparent damage control, the Indiana Fever are building something authentic and potentially historic. The same player and team that Swoopes spent a year trying to tear down might just be hoisting a trophy while she watches from home. "We went from the locker room is in shambles. Players want to leave. It's a toxic environment. Nobody wants to be there. The fans are terrible," to "I don't know, I wasn't even in the locker room," to the OGs that they brought in, the OGs that said, "I want to come play over there," one analyst pointed out, highlighting the dramatic shift in narrative around the Fever. What we're witnessing with Swoopes' firing isn't just workplace drama. It's the WNBA making a statement about its future. As Nancy Lieberman perfectly put it, we should embrace people who take us to another level. The league is finally prioritizing accuracy and growth over protecting legends whose actions undermine the sport's popularity. While Swoopes scrambles with her sudden praise of Clark and the Fever, the basketball world has moved on. The WNBA's unprecedented growth demands voices that elevate rather than diminish its rising stars. In the end, true basketball legends are measured not just by their on-court achievements, but by how they lift up the next generation, something Swoopes clearly never understood. For all Swoopes' accomplishments as a player might, and they are considerable might, her inability to embrace the future of women's basketball ultimately cost her a seat at the table. There's a valuable lesson here for other WNBA legends. Your playing career only buys you so much goodwill. When you consistently undermine the league's growth with misinformation and obvious bias, even Hall of Fame credentials won't save you. And there you have it. Sheryl Swoopes talked herself right out of a broadcasting career by betting against the most electric player women's basketball has ever seen. From "she takes 40 shots a game" to frantically praising the Fever as championship contenders, the damage control is too little, too late.